Welcome, beautiful Paris Saint Germain family. Now that Paris Saint Germain are in the UEFA Champions League final for the second time in their history, I thought to myself, let's compare this Paris Saint Germain 11 team manager to the Paris Saint Germain team that reached the Champions League final in 2020. Let's look tactically between, the underlining numbers with Thomas Tuchel and Luis Enrique. 25 goals scored in 2020 compared to 43 goals. Obviously, we played way more games this time. 2.5 goals under Thomas Tuchel and 2.6 under Luis Enrique. And one thing I've realized when it comes to these comparisons, because this is something a lot of Paris Saint Germain supporters and even non-Paris Saint Germain supporters have been discussing about, a lot of recency bias. People are forgetting how great the 2020 team was. I will still give potentially the edge to this team, but the 2020 team deserves a lot of respect, especially when you consider not that much money was spent on that Thomas Tuchel squad, apart from Neymar and Mbappe, compared to the Luis Enrique squad. 25 XG, 2.5 XG per game, compared to 2 XG per game. The numbers are similar. Goals allowed, 0.5 for Thomas Tuchel. Goals allowed, 0.9 for Luis Enrique. We obviously know Thomas Tuchel is a more defensive manager, whilst Luis Enrique is a more offensive manager. But the surprising thing is that Luis Enrique's attacking numbers are not, at a level higher than Thomas Tuchel's ones, despite conceding more goals. But I guess, that's the thing. Thomas Tuchel had Neymar, Mbappe, these clinical attackers, Di Maria as well. 10 XG against, 1 XG against per game, 17 XG against, 1.1 XG against per game. So defensively, extremely similar. Offensively, extremely similar when you look at the underlying numbers. Obviously, if you want to put more into context, you look at the oppositions. Thomas Tuchel had to face Galatasaray twice, Club Brugge twice, and Real Madrid twice in the Champions League group stage. Dortmund twice, obviously, in the round of 16. Leipzig once in the semis, and Atalanta once in the quarters. Whilst Luis Enrique has had to face so many more teams and stronger teams. I mean, I think the Liverpool team, I don't think any of the sides on that left side is stronger than the Liverpool team. Arsenal team, I don't think any side on the left side is stronger than this Arsenal team. Yeah. I mean, the best teams from the left brackets, probably maybe Atalanta. That just shows, the teams we faced that time. But with the new format, with, how Paris Saint Germain got a very tough draw in the group stage and a tough draw in the knockouts, obviously, the teams we've faced have been way harder this time than back in 2020. Much tougher, more games to prove yourself, and Paris Saint Germain have proven themselves to be better. But now, let's come to the players. But before we come to the players, we obviously got to decide, Luis Enrique or Thomas Tuchel. Look, last season I was already talking about, is Luis Enrique the greatest Paris Saint Germain manager? I mean, in a debut season, winning a domestic treble, including reaching the Champions League semi-final for the first time in Paris Saint Germain history, is absolutely huge already. Thomas Tuchel, obviously, first season, won everything domestically, including the Coupe de la Ligue that used to exist in his second season, not his first. We were obviously on for a quadruple. An actual quadruple would be a 5-tuple if we include the Trophée du Champion, as we're doing this year. So, Thomas Tuchel, I don't want to be recency biased. I don't want to forget all the great stuff Thomas Tuchel did. But I have to give it to Luis Enrique. 2 seasons, 2 domestic trebles. Obviously, Thomas Tuchel in his first season battled to Manchester United. Luis Enrique, you could somewhat say battled to Dortmund, but we lost in the semi. It's a bit different. And we had, Mbappe was garbage for both Tuchel and Luis Enrique. That's a huge similarity, actually. But I got to give it to Luis Enrique. The way we're playing, we're more dominant. He's not relying as much on individual talent as Thomas Tuchel. One thing we have to give Thomas Tuchel, though, Luis Enrique has had way more power to build the squad that he wants and has had way more money to build the squad that he wants. So I don't think it's like Tuchel, Lucho. Obviously, if Lucho wins the UCL this year, it's going to be like that. We're talking manager-wise, how they set up the team, the project that they had. It's not that far away. But I got to give the manager thing to Luis Enrique. Moving now into the players. And wow. Starting off with a bang, Keylor Navas versus Gianluigi Donnarumma. And we got to go back to 2020. Paris Saint Germain only conceded 5 goals in that Champions League tournament. We were the best defensive side in Europe that season. Keylor Navas, and he was huge. Yes, he was shielded by Thiago Silva, Marquinhos, and Kimpembe. But when we needed Navas to make a save, he did it. In that group stage, we faced Real Madrid. He kept like 10 saves. It was a record in the Champions League group stage. Had a huge game versus Atalanta. had a huge goalkeeping penalty save versus Club Brugge in the group stage that kept us in the tournament. So Keylor Navas, I remember we used to talk about comparing the two 11s, and we picked Keylor Navas. But after what Donnarumma did in maybe the Aston Villa second leg, in the Arsenal combined legs, I think it got to be Donnarumma. Keylor Navas as well, his second year was probably better because we were worse defensively, like his performance versus Bayern, everyone remembers that. His performance versus Barca, everyone remembers that. So I gotta give the nudge to Gianluigi Donnarumma. Moving into the right back position, honestly, we don't have to talk too much. Kerrer was a nice role player in the team, but I mean, he costed us bigger than anyone has. In the first season under Thomas Tuchel, costed us versus United, and obviously in the Champions League final, doesn't mark Coleman, and it's an easy header. He's competing against someone that is competing to become the right back GOAT of all time, Ashraf Hakimi. It's not a question. Hakimi, obviously. Moving into the centre-back position, on the right centre-back position, we have Marquinhos from this season and Thiago Silva. Grande Silva. Oh, monstro. In my opinion, the biggest QSI legend for the longevity, for the leadership, for the impact, and for being there pretty much all the time. Thiago Silva against Marquinhos, and everyone knows how I feel about this Marquinhos. I think he's a good player, but if we're comparing him to that Thiago Silva, I mean, it's not even a debate. Prime Presnel Kimpembe versus Pacho this season. And, when you think about Pacho, a lot of similarities with Kimpembe when it comes to the physical attributes, the athletic attributes. But I would say the biggest difference between them, Pacho way calmer. Kimpembe, very aggressive. And I don't think it's a good or a bad thing as long as you don't make any stupid, harsh challenges, which Kimpembe didn't make that year. He pocketed Haaland, he pocketed Ronaldo, he pocketed Lewandowski, he was pocketed Zapata, he was pocketing every striker he was playing against. So huge shout out to Pacho for the season he's having. I don't want to underrate the season that Pacho's having, but it obviously has to be Presnel Kimpembe. When he used to be good, when I used to like him. Moving into the left back position, we have Juan Bernardino and Nunmensch. And look, we got to talk about that Juan. But that Juan Bernat was absolutely huge for us, especially in the Champions League. I remember his goal versus Napoli. I remember his goal versus Liverpool. I remember his goal in the Champions League semi-final versus RB Leipzig. I remember all the great stuff Juan Bernat has done for this club. It was a bit unfortunate. He got that ACL and never came back to that level. But Juan Bernat was a great soldier for this team. But Nuno Mendes, we got to be honest. I think Nuno Mendes I would now say he's the greatest left back in Paris Saint Germain history. I think after his Champions League run this season, I have to put him above Maxwell. All respect to Maxwell, obviously. But Nuno Mendes, once again, just like Ashraf Hakimi, the best left back in the world. Gotta be picked in this position. Moving into the midfield, the number 6 position this season is obviously by Vitinha. And in 2020, it was Marquinhos being the defensive midfielder for Paris Saint Germain. And wow, this is probably the toughest one we're looking at alongside Navas and Donnarumma. It's such a tough one. It's such a tough one because for me, that's Marquinhos' second best season at Paris Saint Germain. Vitinha this season, I still feel his knockouts last season was better, but I also said this before, maybe Vitinha looked better because the midfield last season wasn't as good as this season, like the midfielders next to him. So he looked better than what he's looking this season. Maybe this season he's also really great. But like if people pick Marquinhos, I'm not going to be mad. If people pick Vitinha, I'm not going to be mad. I think both these players deserve to be the 6 in this team. Marquinhos was absolutely crucial with some huge goals as well. Obviously, that goal versus RB Leipzig that we all remember. And the huge goal versus Atalanta. I don't know, man. Because I want to remove recency bias, all of that. And that Marquinhos, man, he was him. That was a Marquinhos I was willing to defend. Vitinha, Marquinhos, And you know what? I've already built majority of the team, so, this is basically the coin toss. You know what? We'll come back to it. Next up, we have Ander Herrera and Joao Neves. Shout out to Ander Herrera, huge role player season that season. Obviously, Verratti was out for many games, and Ander Herrera picked up, the veteran role of that midfield, and was a good player to have. It was a good player to have, but We talk about here about João Neves. It's someone I'm comparing to young Verratti. Like João Neves is said to have an absolutely insane Paris Saint Germain career. So once again, all respect to Ander Herrera, but it got to be João Neves in the midfield. Lastly but not least, another tough one. Marco Verratti versus Fabian Ruiz, because Fabian Ruiz, we have to talk about his performances. The Euro Player of the tournament and what he's doing for Paris Saint Germain in the Champions League this season is it's absolutely immense. And then you look at Marco Verratti, man, I miss him. I miss Verratti, man. The owl. Verratti in those Champions League games. It was obviously a bit unfortunate he didn't play that many games in the knockout stages in the 2020 run because he was injured heavily. But Marco Verratti, yeah, I mean, he's the best midfielder we have looked at so far. It got to be Marco Verratti. Shout out to Fabian, man. I love Fabian, man. He's my dog, man. But Marco, man. The greatest midfielder in Paris Saint Germain history. Gotta be here. Moving up until the attack. And as you can see, these are the comparisons I've made. Mbappe, Dembele, Kvara, Di Maria, and Neymar do it. Could have done Neymar, Dembele, and do it Mbappe. Could have done that with Dembele being the goal scorer, Mbappe being the goal scorer. But I wanted to build as good of a 11. And I think Dembele is better than Mbappe, especially Mbappe that year. So Dembele and Mbappe, I mean, Dembele having a Ballon d'Or-esque season. Mbappe that season, it's a bit unfortunate. He was obviously injured for the knockout stages. But let's be real here. Mbappe before 2021 and 21-22, he wasn't that guy in the Champions League. He just wasn't. Ousmane Dembele this season, I mean, he's not just that guy. He is him. Ousmane Dembele has been him this season for Paris Saint Germain. Obviously, got to be Ousmane Dembele. This one, though, very tough. You know what? We'll finish off this one. This is either doing Neymar, the new Neymar, the old classic Neymar, Neymar Jr. Shout out to Due. Shout out. But obviously. Neymar! And moving into the last attacker, Khvicha, Kvaratskhelia, and Di Maria. I think if Khvicha was here from the beginning of the season, it would be much tighter. And it's already tight. That's how impactful Khvicha has been for us, especially now in the knockout stages. But Di Maria that season. I remember when we faced Real Madrid in the group stage without Cavani, without Neymar, without Mbappe. And we slapped them 3-0. Was it Di Maria brace? Angel Di Maria. Or a Di Maria goal and assist, I think. Maybe Cardi scored the tap in or something. But Angel, que jogador. Then obviously, hat-trick of assists against Club Brugge in the group stage that season. Assist versus Dortmund to that Neymar header. Obviously missed that Atalanta game. Then was there for the Leipzig semi-final. MVP. Shout out to Khvicha. Shout out to Khvicha. All respect and love, but it got to be El Fideo Di Maria. And now we take a look at the lineup right here. Beautiful. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Lucha is the manager, and this is the team. And as you can see, I picked Vitinha as the midfielder. It's really tight, because that Marquinhos was absolutely insane for us that season. I picked Vitinha. And as you can see, we have Donna, Hakimi, Nuno, Vitinha, Neves, Dembele. That's 6 Paris Saint Germain players from 2025 and 5 players from 2020. But as I said, Marquinhos, Vitinha is basically a coin toss, potentially. So maybe Marquinhos even takes that spot. It's a very tight. You know, a lot of people I've seen there constantly, oh, this PSG team is so much better than the previous. Yes, I mean, when they talk about the Messi era, yes, no PSG fan is propping up that team so much. That was still a great team. It was just unfortunate how we lost versus Madrid in the first season. In the second year, the World Cup fucked us up, and we didn't have that great of squad depth and so on, and injuries and all of that. But when we go back to 2020, no, it's not that far off. Neymar, Verratti, Di Maria, Kimpembe, Thiago Silva. Imagine this was the team managed by Lucho. Imagine, so in the attack, you keep Dembele, you swap Khvicha and, let's say, Due for Di Maria and Neymar. You swap Fabian for Verratti. You swap Thiago Silva and Pacho for Kimpembe. This 11 would be absolutely insane. That midfield, I would love to see Neves and Verratti play together. Father and son. And Di Maria and Khvicha, we see the similarities. Due and Neymar, we see the similarities. Dembele and Mbappe, we see why Dembele is better. But yeah, Very enjoyable video to make, and I think this is something a lot of Paris Saint Germain and non-PSG fans are talking about. I even saw Champions League Twitter account upload like the 2020 XI compared to the 2025 one. So this is something a lot of people are discussing about. And I tell a lot of people, stop being too recency biased. I mean, absolutely adore this current Paris Saint Germain team. Absolutely in love with it. Absolutely excited for the upcoming Champions League final. But we need to be honest and we need to respect that 2020 team. That was the first team that reached the Champions League final. And there's a reason they reached that Champions League final. Because look at this team. That's been it from boy PSGINT. Let me know in the comments down below. How many Paris Saint Germain players from the 2020-11 go in to the current Paris Saint Germain 2025 XI? That's been it from boy PSGINT. Hopefully, guys have enjoyed this video. And as usual, allez, allez, allez Paris.